Howdy, and welcome to Wise About Texas, the Texas History Podcast. This is your host, Ken Wise. Thanks so much for tuning in today for some Texas history. We just finished the 190th anniversary of the Texas Revolution as I record and release this podcast. I hope everybody found a way to celebrate 190 years of Texas independence. I know this period is extremely busy for me with a lot of speeches and et cetera, but it's always a wonderful time and a happy time, and I hope you got to attend at least one celebration of Texas independence. I want to thank Emily Balcom with the Alamo on this podcast. This is the next episode after I got to interview with Emily on Stories Bigger Than Texas, the Alamo podcast. And man, we had a great time, great conversation. Be sure and go tune in to Stories Bigger Than Texas from the Alamo. It's a great podcast, and I was really honored to be able to participate. And as you might have seen on the Wise About Texas Instagram, I got to meet Bella, the Alamo cat. So I feel like that my Texas history career has made some significant steps by getting to know Bella. Today, I'm going to release the first part. This is part one of an interview with Dr. John Adams about former Texas governor and Supreme Court Justice and sort of the father of Texas higher education, Oran Milo Roberts. Oran Roberts was he was born in South Carolina, but went to the University of Alabama, for which we will forgive him. He graduated and was admitted to the bar in Alabama. He served in the Alabama legislature. He then moved in 1841 to San Augustine, Texas, and became a lawyer, which Dr. Adams will discuss. He was appointed, he served as a district attorney, he served as a district judge, and then in 1856 ran for and won a position on the Texas Supreme Court. Now, this is before secession, of course. He would then go on to serve on the court after secession, which is a unique circumstance probably throughout the entire South. I won't give too much more away. But Dr. Adams has written a very interesting book about Oran Roberts. Oran Roberts has been overlooked, in my view, for a long time. He was a dedicated servant to the state, and he served during a very tumultuous time in Texas history. So he is a very interesting figure. Before we get to the interview, let me introduce you to Dr. John Adams. Dr. Adams has 3 degrees from Texas A&M University. He's an Air Force veteran. He worked in the banking industry in Laredo. He was CEO of the Laredo Development Foundation. He was appointed CEO of Enterprise Florida, which is now known as Florida's Department of Commerce, during the administration of Governor Jeb Bush. He also chaired an industry sector advisory council at the U.S. Department of Commerce, where he participated in several international trade negotiations. He's been an advisor to the World Trade Organization and many, many other public services that are just too many to list. He's also a pilot, very involved in the space program. But for our purposes, he's a wonderful historian, and not just a good historian, but a prolific historian. The book we're going to talk about in these next couple of episodes is his 20th book, and during the interview, you'll hear of a couple more that he's almost finished with. So Dr. Adams is a busy man. I was very grateful that he took the time to interview for Wise About Texas. And now let's get to part one of an interview with Dr. John Adams about Governor and jurist Oran Milo Roberts. Well, Dr. Adams, thank you for agreeing to be interviewed here on Wise About Texas. Good to see you this morning.
Yes, good to be here too.
Well, what begat this interview was your recent presentation at the Texas State Historical Association annual meeting, which I had the pleasure of moderating, and you presented on your new book, The Old Alcalde, The Life and Times of the Texas Fire Eater, Oran Roberts, which was just fascinating. This is a individual, a governor, Supreme Court justice, a very prominent Texas citizen that in his service kind of straddled the Civil War, and he never really has gotten the attention he deserves. What attracted you to Oran Roberts as a subject for this book?
Well, again, thank you for joining. Appreciate this. Well, basically, I believe I backed into it is the best way to describe it. I've fooled around with a lot of the late 1800s, and it first started out with a couple of research items, but the first one was a book on Saul Ross. I did a book on Saul Ross, his last 10 years when he was president of A&M. And in doing that, I was coming across a couple of individuals repeatedly, and Hogg would pop up. Obviously, he was governor during the 1890s. And then I was coming up with a guy named Lawrence Blackshear, who was the principal at Prairie View. At that time, the president of Prairie View was called a principal. But the third person I keep bumping into was this Oran Roberts. And I got to tell you, I didn't know a whole lot of Oran Roberts, a whole lot about it. I went to look stuff up. First thing that popped up, believe it or not, he was basically the founder, or one of the founders, back up, on the Texas State Historical Association, one of the principal early officers. And then the second thing is, I came across he lives the entire second half of the 1800s. Basically, he's in Texas from 1840 till he dies in 1898. So he is at the crossroads of every event from the Republic of Texas all the way through the state and the things it's done. And so I started looking, like I said, and I found those items, and I said, got to be a book. There's got to be a lot of stuff. Couldn't find a book. There was an article done for his obituary in the late 1890s in the Texas State Historical Quarterly. Obviously, I got to do a pitch on one group. North Texas has the portal on Texas history. Oh my goodness. If researchers are not using this and tap into it, and you go in and keyword, and all of a sudden, all those old newspapers, and I'm keyworded, and I'm coming across the old Alcalde, Oran Roberts. And so the answer to the question is, I said, let's look. Found one or two dissertations. One was done about 5 or 6 years ago in North Texas. I looked at it. It was fine. And then the last part of this, I've been going over to the Barker, or now it's the Briscoe History Center in Austin, for the last 45 years. And so I walk in the door. I got to tell you this story. I walk in the door. They've redone their whole reading room, and it's really, really neat over there. They've got a little display area as you go down the hallway on the left-hand side. I walk through the main doors of the reading room, and at the back, on the middle of the file cabinets or whatever, there is a bust. And and I got a picture of it in the book. It is a bust of Oran Roberts. So I sign in. I asked the lady. I said, "Do you know who that is?" She said, "Hey, we don't have any. We don't know. They brought it out of the warehouse and put it there." Well, I'm looking at this. Then in the far left-hand corner, if you go there, they have the statue of Stephen F. Office. So I come back to it, and I looked at the lady, and I said, "That's the first employee of the University of Texas." Of course, at this moment now, I've disrupted the reading room, and everybody's looking at me. Which, I'm pretty, shy, introverted type person. So it didn't bother me too bad. And they said, "What are you talking about?" I said, that's Oran Roberts. And Oran Roberts, they said, "And who's that?" I said, "Well, other than being governor and writing the bill and funding the University of Texas, he's the first employee of the University of Texas." And so then they asked me to, sit down and start researching, and then they pull the boxes out. So that's a little longer answer than you probably wanted, but it literally, I often say it's for me, I love the research, and I'm darn good at it. And the hunt to me is almost better than the kill. And then all of a sudden they bring out these research boxes, and it dawns on me, there's not been a lot of people in these. You can tell when people have used boxes and stuff. Parts I couldn't even get into that I'll talk about later if you want to, about its legal information. But it set up an entire opportunity then, and repeated trips going back to dig into those documents.
Well, I do want to unpack some of this that you mentioned. First of all, let me go backwards a little bit and echo what you said about the portal to Texas history. I use that all the time. It's an amazing sort of, I don't know how to characterize it, archive, I guess, of a sort, digital archive. University of North Texas, just for the listeners' benefit, is welcoming any and all Texas history material that you want to send them, and they digitize it and put it in this collection, keyworded, character recognition, all that stuff. And it's truly amazing. You can search, you never know what you're going to find. I was doing an episode on the San Jacinto Monument and found some of the original documents about how it was built. You'd be amazed. So the Portal to Texas History is a wonderful website. And the Briscoe Center, of course, I also use all the time, which is a remarkable archive at the University of Texas. It's especially significant that a couple of Aggies on this call would use that so often, but I guess you got to go where the documents are.
I'm going to tell you what the connection is that made that Aggies making that little university possible over there. Let me reinforce the North Texas thing. I've been looking at microfiche for 40 years. You can almost go blind, comatose. Right. And microfiche is fabulous. They're saving records, but the portal in Texas history, if you don't even just go look at it and check it.
Well, let's talk for just a second about, you said you love the research. I do too. The hunt is just amazing because you're learning constant. Every time you flip a page, you learn something new, it seems. But as far as writing the book, when did you figure you'd had enough research to start putting pen to paper, and how did you construct this book?
I've done quite a few books. I think this is the 20th. And from the very first book, which was done on a Selectric typewriter 45, 50 years ago. And of course, when you make a mistake, then even whiteout doesn't work. The computers technology is wonderful. But what I do is I don't get wrapped up in doing 3x5 cards. And a lot of people, there's no one technique to doing it, but I have a basic outline. I know where I'm going. I actually try to find out what happened at the end. So very quickly, the 1890s popped up because I'd worked on Raw, so I knew that. So then I began, and I figure a page a day, you'll have a book in a year. Now, that means you might have worked a week to come up with that page, or 3 trips to the archives, but that's an average type thing. And then start building that. The other thing is I don't have to go from A to Z. If I'm working on the first chapter and all of a sudden I find out there's something about in 1860 and I've got that, I capture that immediately in maybe a potential next chapter. Maybe I'll put a temporary number of chapter 4 or 5 on it, and then make sure I capture it, because the succession I knew was going to be that period was going to be critical, and I had to get to that. The other thing is, knowing what I kind of where I want to go, I think I then really want to find out, is there something here? My first call was, and when I checked it out, I found out he'd grown up in northern Alabama, and gone to University of Alabama, and then set for his law degree there, not at Alabama, but among the way they did it then was you sat and studied with a group of legal counsels, and they tested you. So I called the University of Alabama, and after 2 or 3 calls, I finally found a person that says, "Hey, I'm processing papers from that period, and give me that name again." And all of a sudden, "Would you like to see a student record? Would you like to see stuff he did?" And I'm going, "No, you're kidding me." And so all of a sudden I realized, one of the hardest parts on doing anybody from that era are the early years.
Yeah.
And I don't know where he went to high school. I don't know whatever, but I did. Then I found the county he was in northern Alabama, and there've been a number of little articles written on that. And so I just build. What I do is I just build from there, and don't hesitate to drop it in. With the edit function and online, you can come back and move chunks and paragraphs around, and it's really really good. The key thing is set it down and put it on paper. I think that's one of the biggest things you want to do. It's important.
He grows up in Alabama and then comes to Texas, I believe, in 1841. Is that right? What was he doing when he came to Texas?
Okay, what happened was he went to University of Alabama. his family all kind of chipped in, brother and all these people. And I talk about that, and this is not unusual. He said, this is what I want to do. They pay for him, and he spends 3 or 3.5 years. Degrees at that time were 3 years. Early degrees is basically what you did. And you can imagine the 3-year degree at the university was like having a PhD then. He comes back home, and the local attorney there, and he goes to a couple of towns. He starts sitting. He sits. He quickly passes the bar for Alabama, and he's a starving new attorney in northern Alabama. So he says, I think the solution is I'll run for office. So the local guy there, who's the state rep, either retires or quit. He runs. I think they're going to pay him $300 or $400. He says the worst decision he ever made, because he is absolutely the most junior person in the legislature. Alabama politics at that time is controlled by the growers and big money in Southern Alabama. He goes up to the Capitol, and he said it's terrible. And he comes back home, and his business, his practice is not getting better. One of the links is he has an uncle and an aunt who had moved to Texas in advance of him. And apparently they had some correspondence, but by 39-40, he loaded up his wife and a couple of wagons and headed west. And what's fascinating about these people that head west, they don't stop anywhere else along the way. This GTT gone to Texas, I mean, when they left Georgia or Virginia or Alabama, their goal was to get across the Sabine River and into Texas. In fact, he was worried about getting across the river. And of course, these relatives, East Texas was 90% of the population in 1845. There were only 125 counties in Texas. There was nothing west of what is I-35. Nothing. Austin was 3 bars, a gambling house, and they're trying to fix the Capitol. There's nothing there. Austin is there is no Dallas-Fort Worth. It's a little trading area. Galveston is the biggest town, but the leading towns are Nacogdoches and St. Augustine. So he ends up in St. Augustine, which is where they have a district court there, and that's also a site of where the Texas Supreme Court holds part of their annual meeting. And again, it's a bigger community when I say few thousand people versus almost none anywhere else. And he arrives there with his family, and they tell him, well, we're glad you're here, but we don't recognize any law degree from anywhere else. And so that knocked out about a lot of people who thought, well, I'll just waltz in here. He says, fine, tell me what I need to do. So they stack him up with books and everything, but there's a real catch to it. You're also going to have to learn the riparian water rights law from the Spanish, Mexico and Spain. We are having nothing but problems with that. That is going to be the biggest thing. And so he probably spends 8 to 10 months. Apparently had to get his Spanish going. He learned he went through that, set for the exams, and got his law license. I really think in hindsight, he really impressed some people about his diligence, being able to do that. Some of the political kingpins at that time were in East Texas and in Marshall. 3 cities, Marshall, Nacogdoches, and St. Augustine, were the real commercial and political things. And then one of the neatest stories, I think, of the whole part is, so he starts his practice. He's doing fine. He gets a house built, and none other than Sam Houston comes through town, and he asks somebody, he said, I can't straighten out some deeds and paperwork and legal stuff. And somehow he gets referred to Oran Roberts, and one of his first customers is none other than Sam Houston.
Well, that's a pretty good client to have.
Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
But I couldn't find out exactly what they straightened out. It's referred to. It's not anecdotal. I mean, it is in fact he he worked for Sam Houston, and that will be critical. One thing people don't realize, I think, and they kind of look at me strange, all these folks knew each other. Yeah. Sam Houston, Henderson, Throckmorton, all the key names that come up, Rip Ford, all the governors, whether they're enemies or friends or legal counsels or legal opponents or commercial people or whatever, because of the group that are, I don't want to say movers and shakers, let's just say active in the commercial endeavors, they might end up being a mover and shaker. All these people will know each other from that period until the early to the mid 1890s when they start passing away. And it's just fascinating. For instance, Rip Ford. Well, we all think about Rip Ford as Ranger. Well, Rip Ford staggers into East Texas from Tennessee. He's not a Ranger. He doesn't know squat about that. But he had taken, I think, 6 months of medical school. So he hung up a medical shingle in St. Augustine saying he was a doctor. I think he's probably a witch doctor. And it was 2 doors down from Roberts. So all of a sudden here from the get-go, and of course things change. And I think he read an ad, Ford probably read an ad in the paper that you can make $40 a month being a Ranger. So he quit the medical business and went to riding horses and being a Ranger. But once he gets there, then just coincidentally, Sam Houston, once the government's formed, appoints him the district attorney. He's very young. He's in his, I guess he would have to be then in his late 20s or 30s. But that all of a sudden, because the DA and obviously is for that county, but then he becomes the district judge. And so that district is about the middle third of going all the way to Lufkin, north of, which would be north of Houston. That district, they didn't come to the court in Augustine. They circuit road. They went to the communities to have the cases. So all of a sudden now he is plugged in and meeting all the county judges, the county sheriffs, the county legal folks, the county business, all the bankers, all the people that are in business, the planners and everybody for the next few years, and really builds up that reputation then.
And then he goes from there to the Supreme Court for the first time at an interesting time in Texas history, because the run-up to secession began during that time, and now he's on the state's highest court. And so talk a little bit about his views on secession and states' rights during this pre-Civil War era.
It is quite fascinating. He is on the Supreme Court. One of the things that I found fascinating, I don't know whether I captured it, is Oran in particular and others, while we talk about people being fire eaters and radical and we want to go to disunion and we want to go to succession, they were trying to figure out, quote, a legal way, a legal justification, a legal pathway to leave the Union. While they're trying to do this, Sam Houston is right there all the way around saying, wait a minute, folks, what are you doing? We joined the Union. We didn't join the North. We didn't join the South. We joined the Union, the Constitution of the United States. Oran Roberts, the war is getting ready to start. He says, I want to make sure I'm not stuck here. I want to be in the military. They said, no. Oh, no. You are going to be here. You're on the court. You've got to help us figure out how to structure this and move towards succession. They were really trying to find not extra legal, but a means to pull this off. And it's never really fully there. Interestingly, very quietly in the shadows, representatives from South Carolina are in Texas trying to affect the public opinion. I know he had to have met with them. Sam Houston, he's in contact with Sam Houston, and Sam's telling him, listen, you want to make a change? Just let's go back to the Republic of Texas. If that's the way you want to do it. And one very important critical thing, Texas is about ready to boom. Texas is on the verge of boom. I'm finishing a book right now called Texas in 1860. And I'll go right up to the date of the succession, and the book is already in process. But I didn't realize economically, Galveston's going to boom. The railroads are starting to expand. There's a lot of things starting to happen, and it's big. It's big. The only thing Texas doesn't have is banking. There was a prohibition against banking because they were afraid of, I don't know, corruption in banking, whatever. So all of a sudden, the powers that be, the representatives, these legal folks, his friends, Rip Ford, they said, look, you need to be the architect of this. Well, he didn't just say, I'll, just do it. He did it. And he's really the architect of the succession. He will chair all the meetings. He will do the agenda for the succession meeting. One of the things he does, he says, now listen, we are not going to embarrass Sam Houston. They continued to try to give him an out. He's the sitting governor. One of the dynamics of this is the one group that they could change the go to succession was to call the legislature. Well, the only person who could call the legislature into session was the governor. And Sam Houston, held off. And then their end around move, they says, well, if you don't call a succession, we will call our own meeting. Well, simultaneously, the succession group calls a meeting, and Sam, realizes, and he calls a formal meeting and also. And again, Roberts, he makes it sure there better not be any problem with Sam Houston. He is what he is, and we're not going to do that. He is even invited at the meeting where the vote is taken and everything. He is not only there, he is sitting up on the stage with the principal people that are doing this. He has nothing to say. He gets the biggest standing ovation coming in and going out. He goes out, he goes back to the mansion, and they, within days, they pack up and head east back. Really, his place was over by San Jacinto. And through this, Roberts is the architect of this. And again, there's another subject that would be a great article of somebody to really dig this out in depth. I mean, there's a lot of fingerprints on this, but he gave them the legal wherewithal. The documents are all written by him. It's just fascinating. And these documents are in the state archives and in Briscoe.
Well, it's fascinating the dignity with which he conducted these proceedings, because this was very controversial, and obviously he serves in the Confederate Army. Then he comes back and again is a Supreme Court justice in 1864, removed, of course, during Reconstruction. So he goes back to the court, but then serves after Reconstruction. So talk briefly about his career in higher education after Reconstruction.
You're exactly right. He comes back. He is in the late '64 back in the Supreme Court. Then when Reconstruction comes in, he's out. When Davis goes out and Koch comes in 67, 68, he is selected to be the U.S. Senator. At that time, the legislature picked the senator. He goes to Washington. He is not seated. Again, let's think about this. Here is an individual, and the term fire eater is, and there were fire eaters and leaders in every state. That's what that moniker means. You are out there on the edge. You're leading the charge. That even with that, they will choose him and not a moderate or somebody to go that might have been recognized to be seated. He spends 3 or 4 months in Washington and comes back home and goes to East Texas to teach school after this. So he is literally he's off the court. He didn't get a Senate seat. He's a little. I never saw where he was discouraged. I don't read where, oh my God, the world's coming. No. His family's over there. He's got a small farm ranch. He goes to a private school there. He's teaching school and just having a fair time until the late 1870s, 76, 77. when they're having a convention to select the governor, and he's in East Texas. He's not involved with it at all. He's, like I said, he's farming and ranching over there. And all of a sudden they get a telegram. What happened was at the convention that went on for a week or so, there was a total lockdown stalemate between 2 or 3 candidates, and they could not get a vote. They did everything to try to rig how they did it, and they couldn't do that. And they said, well, it is 110 degrees here. They were running out of whiskey and barbecue. They said, well, we'll solve it. We'll go to Galveston. We'll have a recess and do it. And then finally they said, no, we're going to name a select committee. I believe about a dozen individuals. They will be sworn in, and they will go behind closed doors, and they will come out with a nominee for the Democratic. They come out and the nominee is none other than Oran Roberts. They sent him a telegram over in East Texas. Apparently, this is where I'd like to confirm it, but he's out at his farm, so he gets on his little horse and rides into town and goes by the local watering hole to see his buddies, and they have a drink, and they've heard about it because, you get a telegram in a town, everybody reads it. There's no confidentiality at the telegraph office. So he's received this and, quite honored. And of course, the rumor or the twist on the story is that he had to borrow 25 cents to acknowledge the telegram and tell the convention that he would be honored to be the representative to run to be governor. And he was well known all over the electorate. So there wasn't a hard deal. Remember now, the Democrats had taken back over first with the Koch administration after the radicals had left. And of course, this led right into it. And your questions on education, that's one of my next projects, Ken. I got to come up with the right term. I don't want to call him the godfather or the father of public higher education. But one of my biggest surprises was his role in public higher education.
Okay, well, we're going to end part 1 here, and we're going to pick it up in part 2 coming soon and talk about Oran Roberts' tremendous impact on higher education in the state. I appreciate you listening to part 1 of this interview. If you want to support the preservation and promotion of Texas history, go to patreon.com/wiseabouttexas. Find us on Instagram @wiseabouttexas, and you can find us on the Wise About Texas Facebook page. I hope you enjoyed part 1. Stay tuned for part 2. In the meantime, go out and do something for Texas today. And until next time, God bless Texas, and we'll see you down the road.